Jamal Price was no stranger to struggle. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood in Atlanta, Georgia, he had seen his fair share of adversity. His mother, a nurse working double shifts to make ends meet, and his father, a factory worker, always emphasized the importance of hard work and perseverance. Jamal, however, had always viewed the world through a different lens. While others saw cracked sidewalks and abandoned lots, Jamal saw potential, vivid colors and forms waiting to be expressed on a canvas. From a young age, Jamal had a knack for turning the ordinary into extraordinary. With a small box of second-hand paints and brushes gifted to him by his late grandmother, he began creating art on anything he could find: cardboard, scrap wood, even old newspapers. His style was bold, a kaleidoscope of colors that told stories of his community, his culture, and his struggles. His abstract art carried an emotional weight, a rawness that resonated with anyone willing to look beyond the surface. Despite his talent, Jamal knew the road to recognition wouldn't be easy. The art world, he had heard, was not always welcoming to outsiders, especially someone like him, young, black, and from a background that wasn't dripping with privilege. But he refused to let that deter him. By his mid-20s, Jamal had amassed a small collection of work that he was proud of. His pieces, inspired by his heritage and life experiences, spoke of resilience, hope, and the beauty found in hardship. Jamal believed in his art and its ability to touch people's hearts. All he needed was a platform, a chance to show the world what he had to offer. The gallery owner. Victor Sterling was a man who had built his reputation on exclusivity. A sharp-dressed, middle-aged man with an air of superiority, Victor owned one of the most prestigious art galleries in the city. His gallery, Sterling Fine Arts, was known for showcasing high-profile artists and catering to a wealthy, elite clientele. Victor prided himself on his refined taste and wasn't shy about his disdain for what he considered inferior art. He often dismissed emerging artists as amateurs who lacked the sophistication and pedigree he believed defined true talent. To Victor, art was as much about who you knew and where you came from as it was about skill or creativity. Despite his outward charm, Victor's prejudices often seeped through in subtle ways. He had a tendency to stereotype artists who didn't fit his narrow view of what an artist should look like. While his gallery boasted diversity on paper, the reality was that Victor's choices often excluded voices from underrepresented communities, perpetuating a cycle of exclusivity. Victor's gallery was a symbol of success to many, but to Jamal, it was more than that. It was an opportunity, a gateway to the recognition he had been working so hard to achieve. The encounter. Jamal walked into Sterling Fine Arts on a crisp Monday afternoon, clutching a portfolio of his best work. He had spent weeks rehearsing what he would say, carefully selecting the pieces he thought would resonate most with someone like Victor. The gallery itself was intimidating. Gleaming floors reflected the soft glow of recessed lighting, and the walls were adorned with meticulously curated artwork, each piece accompanied by a small plaque listing an exorbitant price. Jamal couldn't help but feel a twinge of nervousness as he approached the front desk, where a sharply dressed receptionist greeted him with a polite but distant smile. "I'd like to speak with Mr. Sterling," Jamal said, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "I'm an artist, and I'd like to show him my portfolio." The receptionist raised an eyebrow, her gaze briefly flicking to Jamal's worn sneakers and simple attire. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. "No, but..." Before Jamal could finish, Victor himself appeared from the back of the gallery, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. His sharp eyes scanned Jamal with a mix of curiosity and condescension. "What's going on here?" Victor asked, his tone brisk. "This gentleman wants to show you his portfolio," the receptionist explained. Victor turned his attention to Jamal, his lips curling into a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Let me guess," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're an up-and-coming artist looking for your big break?" Jamal nodded, undeterred. "Yes, sir. I've worked hard on my pieces, and I think they could find a place here in your gallery." Victor chuckled, a sound that was more mocking than amused. "I see," he said, glancing at the portfolio in Jamal's hands. "Well, I'll save you some time. We have a very specific clientele here, people who appreciate refined art. You might be better off trying one of those community art fairs, or, what do they call them? Pop-ups? Jamal's jaw tightened, but he forced himself to remain calm. If you'd just take a look at my work, I think you'll see. Look, Victor interrupted, his tone turning cold. I'm sure you've got talent in your own way. But this gallery isn't for everyone. We cater to serious collectors. Your art, whatever it is, probably wouldn't sell here. The words stung, each one landing like a slap. Victor hadn't even bothered to open the portfolio, to give Jamal's work a chance. The dismissal wasn't just about the art, it was personal, rooted in assumptions about who Jamal was and what he could achieve. Jamal's reaction. Jamal stood there for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. He wanted to argue, to demand that Victor at least look at his work before passing judgment. But he could see the disdain in the gallery owner's eyes, the smirk that said he had already made up his mind. Thank you for your time, Jamal said finally, his voice steady, despite the lump in his throat. He turned and walked out of the gallery, clutching his portfolio tightly. As he stepped onto the bustling city street, the weight of the encounter hit him like a tidal wave. He felt humiliated, angry, and, above all, determined. Victor Sterling had dismissed him, but Jamal knew his worth. He knew his art had the power to move people, to tell stories that mattered. This isn't the end, Jamal thought, his resolve hardening. He may not see it, but someone will. And when they do, I'll make sure the world knows my name. With renewed determination, Jamal decided to focus on his community, the people who had always supported him. He would prove Victor wrong, not with words, but with action. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but Jamal was ready to walk it, one brushstroke at a time. The discovery. Jamal Price's determination didn't waver after his disheartening encounter with Victor Sterling. If anything, it only strengthened his resolve. He threw himself into his art, channeling the sting of rejection and the fire of ambition into every piece he created. His work became even more vivid and daring, reflecting not just his personal journey but the collective struggles and triumphs of the community that had shaped him. It was at a local community center exhibit that the trajectory of Jamal's life would begin to change. The exhibit, organized by a grassroots collective, aimed to highlight underrepresented artists in the city. The walls of the modest venue were adorned with paintings, photographs, and sculptures, each piece telling a unique story. Jamal's work, however, stood out. His large, vibrant canvases seemed to pulsate with life, drawing viewers in with their bold colors and intricate textures. Among the attendees that evening was Eleanor Carmichael, a well-known art critic with a reputation for discovering raw, untapped talent. Eleanor was an older woman with a discerning eye and a passion for championing artists who challenged convention. She had come to the exhibit on a whim, not expecting much. But when she saw Jamal's work, she froze, her sharp eyes scanning every inch of the canvas in front of her. This, she murmured to herself, stepping closer to one of Jamal's pieces, titled Roots of Resilience. It was a sprawling abstract work that seemed to capture the essence of struggle and hope, with jagged lines giving way to soft, flowing curves. The colors, deep blues, fiery oranges, and earthy browns, told a story that was both deeply personal and universally resonant. Eleanor sought out the artist, finding Jamal standing near his display, nervously observing the reactions of the crowd. "You're Jamal Price?" she asked, her voice warm but inquisitive. "Yes," he replied, surprised that someone had sought him out. "I've been an art critic for over 3 decades, Eleanor said, gesturing toward his work. "And let me tell you, I haven't seen anything this powerful in years. Your work is extraordinary." Jamal blinked, momentarily speechless. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice filled with both gratitude and disbelief. Eleanor wasn't one to give empty praise. She asked Jamal about his inspirations, his techniques, and his vision as an artist. Their conversation lasted over an hour, and by the end of it, Eleanor was convinced that Jamal's art deserved a much larger audience. The breakout moment. True to her word, Eleanor wrote a glowing review of Jamal's work in The Art Perspective, a respected publication that catered to collectors and art enthusiasts. Her article, titled The Soul of a Community, The Rise of Jamal Price, described his art as a visual symphony of resilience, identity, and raw emotion. The review garnered attention almost immediately. Collectors who had never heard of Jamal began searching for his work online, eager to own a piece by the artist Eleanor had described as a voice for the voiceless. A small but influential online gallery reached out to Jamal, offering to feature his pieces on their platform. Jamal was hesitant at first. He had always dreamed of seeing his art in physical galleries, but the online gallery's team assured him they could help him reach a global audience. Reluctantly, he agreed. Within weeks, his work was uploaded to the platform, and the response was overwhelming. Collectors from across the country, and even abroad, began purchasing his pieces. Each sale brought not just financial stability, but also validation that his art resonated with people far beyond his local community. Media coverage. The momentum didn't stop there. Social media played a significant role in catapulting Jamal into the spotlight. Art enthusiasts and influencers shared images of his vibrant canvases, praising their emotional depth and unique style. Hashtags like #JamalPriceArt and #AbstractWithSoul began trending, bringing his work to an even wider audience. Local news outlets picked up on the story, framing Jamal as a rising star who had overcome the odds to achieve success. Interviews followed, where Jamal spoke candidly about his journey, his inspirations, and his desire to uplift other underrepresented artists. "Art is a way to tell our stories," he said during one interview. "It's a way to preserve our history, our struggles, and our triumphs. I want my work to remind people that there's beauty in resilience." His sincerity and humility endeared him to audiences, and soon, high-profile exhibitions came calling. Jamal was invited to showcase his work at a prestigious art fair in New York City, alongside some of the biggest names in contemporary art. The event was a turning point. Critics and collectors alike were captivated by Jamal's work, praising it for its emotional intensity and innovative use of color and texture. One piece, The Fire Within, sold for an astonishing $250,000, a record for an artist who had been virtually unknown just months earlier. Victor's disdain. Meanwhile, Victor Sterling couldn't escape the buzz surrounding Jamal. News of the young artist's meteoric rise was impossible to ignore, especially when Eleanor Carmichael's article and subsequent media coverage reached Victor's social circle. Victor, however, was far from impressed. At a dinner party with fellow gallery owners, he dismissed Jamal's success as a passing trend. "Abstract art is so overhyped these days," he said, swirling his glass of red wine. "And this Price fellow, what's his name? Jamal? He's just the flavor of the month. People will forget about him as soon as the next undiscovered talent comes along." His colleagues, however, weren't so sure. Some had seen Jamal's work and were genuinely impressed. Others noted the growing demand for diversity in the art world and recognized that Jamal's success was part of a larger cultural shift. Victor's dismissive attitude wasn't just rooted in skepticism about Jamal's art, it was personal. He remembered the young man who had walked into his gallery months earlier, portfolio in hand. The thought that someone he had so casually dismissed could now command six-figure sales was a bitter pill to swallow. Still, Victor refused to admit he had been wrong. In his mind, success in the art world was about pedigree and connections, not talent or authenticity. But as Jamal's star continued to rise, it became clear that Victor's outdated views were leaving him behind. Jamal's work wasn't just a trend, it was a movement, a powerful reminder that art could transcend barriers and challenge the status quo. The milestone. Jamal Price's meteoric rise continued unabated, culminating in an invitation to participate in a prestigious international art auction in New York City. It was an event that brought together collectors, critics, and industry heavyweights from around the globe. Jamal's pieces were highly anticipated, with many speculating they could fetch unprecedented prices for an artist so early in his career. The piece Jamal chose to submit for auction was called Legacy Unbroken, a sprawling, 7-foot-wide canvas that embodied everything his art had come to represent. The painting featured a riot of colors and textures, interwoven with abstract motifs that hinted at intergenerational struggles and triumphs. At its core was a recurring symbol in Jamal's work, a broken chain, reforged with golden threads, representing resilience and transformation. When the auctioneer unveiled Legacy Unbroken to the audience, there was a collective gasp. The painting seemed to command the room, its vibrant energy radiating off the canvas. "Let's start the bidding at $500,000, the auctioneer announced. The room buzzed with excitement as hands shot up. The bidding escalated rapidly, each number announced by the auctioneer eliciting murmurs of disbelief. Jamal, watching from the sidelines, felt his heart race as the numbers climbed higher and higher. 1 million, 1.5, 2 million, 2.5. Finally, the gavel came down. "Sold for $3 million, the auctioneer declared. The room erupted into applause, and Jamal felt a swell of emotion. This moment wasn't just about the money, it was a validation of everything he had worked for, a testament to his talent and perseverance. He had arrived. Victor's desperation. While Jamal's star soared, Victor Sterling's fortunes took a sharp turn for the worse. The once revered Sterling Fine Arts Gallery was struggling to stay afloat. Victor had long relied on his reputation and his connections to attract both artists and buyers, but the art world was changing. Collectors were increasingly drawn to fresh, diverse voices, and Victor's outdated elitism no longer held the same appeal. The decline was gradual at first, a few unsold exhibitions, a noticeable dip in attendance at gallery events. But soon, the financial strain became impossible to ignore. Artists began pulling their work from the gallery, seeking out more inclusive spaces where their art would be celebrated rather than judged. Victor's once loyal clientele followed suit, leaving his gallery eerily quiet. Desperate to keep his business afloat, Victor tried everything, slashing commission fees, hosting events to drum up interest, even entertaining offers to feature less traditional art. But his efforts were too little, too late. The gallery that had once been a symbol of prestige was now teetering on the brink of closure. The twist of fate. It was during this period of desperation that Victor attended a high-profile art auction, hoping to network with collectors and perhaps find inspiration for revitalizing his gallery. He scanned the room, noting the buzz surrounding one particular piece, Legacy Unbroken. Victor didn't recognize the artist's name. He had deliberately avoided reading about Jamal Price, dismissing him as a social media darling whose fame wouldn't last. But as Victor examined the painting, he found himself drawn to it despite himself. The vibrancy, the depth, it was undeniable. When the bidding began, Victor felt an unexpected urge to participate. Perhaps, he thought, acquiring a piece like this could restore some of his gallery's lost prestige. He joined the bidding war, his competitive nature taking over as the numbers climbed higher and higher. By the time the gavel fell, Victor was the proud owner of Legacy Unbroken. It was the most he had ever spent on a single piece, but he was convinced it would be worth it. It wasn't until the paperwork was finalized that Victor saw the name of the artist, Jamal Price. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Memories of their first encounter flooded back, the young man standing in his gallery, holding a portfolio Victor hadn't even bothered to open. "This can't be," Victor muttered to himself. But the evidence was there, undeniable. The artist he had mocked and dismissed had become the creator of the most valuable piece in his collection. A confrontation. Not long after the auction, Victor received an unexpected visitor at his gallery. Jamal walked in, dressed sharply but simply, exuding the quiet confidence of someone who knew his worth. Victor froze when he saw him, the irony of the moment sinking in. The young artist he had once belittled now stood before him as a celebrated name in the art world, a man with the power to change the course of Victor's failing gallery. "Mr. Sterling," Jamal said, his voice calm but firm. "It's been a while." Victor managed a strained smile. "Jamal. I wasn't expecting you." "I'm sure you weren't," Jamal replied. He glanced around the gallery, noting the empty walls and the absence of visitors. Business isn't what it used to be, is it? Victor's face reddened, but he didn't respond. I came to talk about the painting you bought, Jamal continued. Legacy unbroken. I heard it's now part of your collection. Victor nodded stiffly. It's a remarkable piece. Truly remarkable. Jamal tilted his head, his expression unreadable. Remarkable enough to sell in your gallery? Victor swallowed hard. I was wrong about you, he admitted, the words clearly difficult for him to say. Your work is extraordinary. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. Jamal studied Victor for a moment before speaking. It's funny, isn't it? How things come full circle. When I walked into this gallery, all I wanted was a chance. A chance to show you my work, to prove that it belonged here. You didn't even look at it. Victor looked down, unable to meet Jamal's gaze. I'm not here for an apology, Jamal said. I'm here to make an offer. Victor's head snapped up, surprise flashing across his face. I want to buy this gallery, Jamal said simply. I want to turn it into a space where artists like me, artists you would have dismissed, can have their voices heard. Victor's jaw tightened. The thought of selling the gallery, the culmination of his life's work, to someone he had once dismissed was a bitter pill to swallow. But he knew he had little choice. The gallery was failing, and without Jamal's offer, it would likely close within months. After a long pause, Victor nodded. If that's what you want, he said quietly, it's yours. For Jamal, the moment wasn't about revenge, it was about redemption. Not just for himself, but for the gallery and what it could become under his leadership. With the purchase finalized, Jamal set out to transform the space, turning it into a hub for diverse, underrepresented voices. As for Victor, Jamal offered him a position as a consultant, a chance to redeem himself by supporting the very artists he had once overlooked. It was a gesture of grace, a reminder that even those who had erred could change and grow. The gallery, now renamed the Price Collective, became a beacon of hope and creativity. Victor's plea. Victor Sterling sat alone in his office, a glass of scotch untouched on his desk. His gallery, once a beacon of prestige and exclusivity, was now a shadow of its former self. The halls were quiet, the walls largely bare. The few artists still represented by Sterling Fine Arts had little market appeal, and the once loyal collectors no longer frequented his events. The failure stung, but what hurt even more was the undeniable truth: the art world had left Victor behind. His stubborn refusal to adapt, his dismissive attitude toward emerging voices, and his prejudice had all contributed to his downfall. Victor had heard whispers of Jamal Price's growing influence and success, but the moment he saw the young artist walk into the gallery, poised, confident, and successful, it was as if a mirror had been held up to his own failures. Jamal represented everything Victor had once dismissed: raw talent, authenticity, and the undeniable power of a fresh perspective. Desperation pushed Victor to take action. He reached out to Jamal through a mutual contact, humbling himself enough to ask for a meeting. When Jamal agreed, Victor prepared himself for what he knew would be a difficult conversation. Jamal arrived at the gallery, now mostly empty, with an air of quiet confidence. He greeted Victor politely, but there was a distance in his demeanor, a clear indication that he hadn't forgotten their initial encounter. Thank you for meeting me, Victor began, his voice lacking its usual bravado. I wanted to apologize for how I treated you before, for not giving you a chance. I was wrong. Jamal studied Victor carefully. The man before him seemed smaller somehow, stripped of the arrogance that had once defined him. What changed? Jamal asked simply. Victor sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. Everything. The art world has changed. People are looking for authenticity, for voices that resonate with the times. I ignored that, and I paid the price. Literally. My gallery is failing, Jamal. And I need your help. Jamal raised an eyebrow. Help? Victor nodded. I'd like to display your work. Your name would bring collectors back, revive this gallery. I know I don't deserve your trust, but I'm asking for it anyway. Jamal's decision. Victor's plea hung in the air, and for a moment, Jamal didn't respond. He thought back to their first meeting, to the way Victor had dismissed him without so much as a glance at his portfolio. The memory still stung. But Jamal had long since moved past the need for validation from people like Victor. After a long pause, Jamal spoke. It's interesting, he said, his tone measured. When I walked into this gallery years ago, I didn't ask for much. Just a chance to show you my work. You didn't even look at it. Victor's face reddened, but he said nothing. Now, Jamal continued, you're asking me to save the gallery that once dismissed me. To lend my name to your reputation. Victor opened his mouth to respond, but Jamal held up a hand to stop him. I'm not here to strike a deal, Victor, Jamal said. I'm here to make an offer. I want to buy this gallery. Victor's eyes widened. You want to buy Sterling Fine Arts? Yes, Jamal replied firmly. Not to preserve it as it is, but to transform it. This place has been a symbol of exclusion for too long. I want to turn it into something meaningful, a space for underrepresented artists to tell their stories, to be seen and celebrated. Victor sat back in his chair, stunned. The thought of selling the gallery, his life's work, was almost too much to bear. But he couldn't deny that Jamal's vision had merit. Sterling Fine Arts was failing under his leadership, and it was clear that Jamal had the talent, resources, and vision to breathe new life into the space. Community focus. Within weeks, the deal was finalized. Jamal purchased the gallery, renaming it the Price Collective. The transformation was immediate. The once sterile space was infused with energy and creativity. The walls were soon filled with works by diverse artists, painters, sculptors, photographers, whose voices had often been overlooked in traditional art spaces. Jamal made it a point to involve the local community in every aspect of the gallery's operations. He established mentorship programs for young, aspiring artists, hosted workshops and panels, and provided a platform for underrepresented voices to shine. The gallery became more than a place to view art, it became a hub for dialogue, education, and empowerment. Collectors who had once frequented Sterling Fine Arts returned, drawn not only by the quality of the art but also by the gallery's commitment to fostering diversity and inclusion. The Price Collective quickly gained a reputation as one of the most dynamic and innovative galleries in the city, setting a new standard for what the art world could and should be. Victor's reflection. Victor, now in a consultant role at the gallery, found himself grappling with feelings of regret and self-awareness. At first, he had taken the position reluctantly, seeing it as a concession rather than an opportunity. But as he worked alongside Jamal and the artists he championed, Victor began to see the depth of his past mistakes. He watched as young artists from diverse backgrounds poured their hearts into their work, each piece a testament to their unique experiences and perspectives. He saw the joy and pride on their faces as their art was displayed, their voices finally heard. For the first time in years, Victor felt a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with prestige or profit. He began mentoring some of the younger artists, offering advice on navigating the art world and sharing the lessons he had learned, both from his successes and his failures. One day, during a quiet moment in the gallery, Victor approached Jamal. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, he admitted. About this place being a symbol of exclusion. You were right. I let my own biases and arrogance blind me to what art is really about. I'm sorry. Jamal looked at him, his expression thoughtful. It's not about the past anymore, Victor, he said. It's about what we do now. This gallery isn't mine, it belongs to the artists, the community, and everyone who believes in the power of art to create change. Victor nodded, his respect for Jamal growing with each passing day. Under Jamal's leadership, the Price Collective flourished, becoming a beacon of hope and a model for inclusivity in the art world. Victor, once a symbol of elitism and exclusion, found redemption through his work with the gallery, proving that even the most stubborn hearts could change. For Jamal, the journey was about more than personal success. It was about creating a legacy that would endure, a testament to resilience, creativity, and the transformative power of art, the transformation. Jamal Price stood in the center of the gallery, now officially renamed the Price Collective. The space had undergone a complete transformation, both physically and philosophically. Gone were the sterile white walls and the unapproachable, intimidating air of exclusivity. In their place were vibrant, colorful murals that celebrated creativity, diversity, and community. The gallery now exuded warmth and energy, a reflection of Jamal's vision for what an art space should be. Jamal had designed the space to be inclusive, with large, open areas for showcasing installations, small nooks for intimate viewing, and a dedicated section for community art workshops. On one wall, a plaque was mounted that read, "Art is the voice of the unheard. Let it echo for generations." For Jamal, this wasn't just about owning a gallery, it was about creating a platform where artists from all walks of life could thrive. He reached out to emerging artists from underrepresented communities, offering them the opportunities he had once been denied. The gallery's mission was clear: to challenge the art world's narrow definitions of success and to prove that talent and authenticity could break down even the most stubborn barriers. Victor's role. Victor Sterling stood in the background during the gallery's grand reopening, feeling like a guest in a space he had once called his own. It was a humbling experience, but one he had come to accept. When Jamal had first offered him the role of consultant, Victor had hesitated. The position felt like a step down from his previous status as a gallery owner, and his pride had resisted the idea. But Jamal's offer had been sincere, not punitive. "I'm giving you this chance because I believe people can change," Jamal had told him. "You have experience that can be valuable, but only if you're willing to use it to support others instead of excluding them." Victor had agreed, and over time, he found a sense of purpose in his new role. As a consultant, he worked closely with young artists, helping them navigate the complexities of the art world. He shared insights on building portfolios, networking with collectors, and presenting their work at exhibitions. Victor's transformation wasn't immediate, but as he mentored these artists, he began to see the profound impact of their stories and perspectives. He realized how much he had missed by clinging to outdated prejudices and assumptions. One artist, a young sculptor named Maria, had moved Victor deeply. Her piece, a towering structure made of recycled materials, depicted the resilience of her immigrant family. Watching her presentation during a workshop, Victor felt a pang of regret for all the stories he had ignored in the past. "You have something truly special, Maria," he told her afterward. "The world needs to see it. And this gallery is the perfect place for that." Victor's words carried weight because they were no longer tinged with condescension. They came from a place of genuine admiration and respect, a testament to how much he had grown under Jamal's leadership. Celebration of diversity. The first major exhibition under Jamal's leadership was titled Voices of the Unseen. It featured the work of 20 emerging artists, each one representing a different cultural background, artistic style, and personal story. The gallery buzzed with excitement on opening night as visitors poured in, collectors, critics, and community members alike. The exhibition was a celebration of diversity in every sense of the word. Paintings, sculptures, photography, and multimedia installations filled the space, each piece telling a unique story. A striking mural by a Native American artist explored the theme of identity and displacement. A series of photographs by a queer artist captured the quiet beauty of chosen families. And a powerful video installation by a refugee artist shared the harrowing journey of fleeing war and finding hope. As Jamal walked through the gallery that evening, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was the vision he had fought for, a space where artists could share their truths without fear of rejection or dismissal. Eleanor Carmichael, the art critic who had championed Jamal early in his career, attended the opening and couldn't hide her admiration. "You've created something extraordinary here, Jamal," she said. "This isn't just a gallery, it's a movement." Victor, too, was present, quietly observing the crowd's reactions. For the first time in years, he felt genuinely proud, not of himself, but of the artists he had helped mentor and the space Jamal had built. The lasting impact. As the night wound down and the last visitors trickled out, Jamal found himself alone in the gallery. He walked through the now quiet space, taking in the artwork that surrounded him. Each piece was a reminder of the power of resilience, creativity, and authenticity, values that had guided him on his own journey. Jamal thought back to the many obstacles he had faced, the dismissals, the rejections, the stereotypes. He thought about Victor, who had once represented everything wrong with the art world, and how even he had found a path to redemption. This gallery, Jamal realized, was more than a personal triumph. It was a legacy, one that would endure long after he was gone. It was a place where artists would be seen and heard, where their voices would echo for generations. As he stood there, Jamal felt a sense of peace he hadn't known before. He had proven to himself, to Victor, and to the world that resilience and talent could triumph over prejudice and adversity. But for Jamal, this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something much bigger, a new chapter not just for him, but for the countless artists whose lives would be changed by the Price Collective. With a quiet smile, Jamal turned off the lights, leaving the gallery bathed in the soft glow of the streetlights outside. Tomorrow, the work would continue. And he wouldn't have it any other way.